Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host Simon Conboy. Today's episode is another entry in this season preview series, and we will be focusing on the NFC West Arizona Cardinals. For those of you who haven't seen one of these episodes before, I will be giving my projected offensive and defensive starters. Of course, we're in the midst of camp, got preseason beginning proper this week, so it may be a little bit wrong, but I'm pretty confident. I'm going to be 90% accurate when it comes to week one of the regular season. I'll then be going through this schedule sort of loosely, highlighting what I believe are the key areas for this team if they are going to make a return to the playoffs, the little patches in the year they're going to have to navigate effectively. Before giving my three key areas, these are areas that are either strengths or question marks that either need to live up to their potential or they're going to have to be better than they look on paper in order for this team to have success. So we'll hop right in with the offensive starters at quarterback. Carson Palmer with what may be his final go around. I'm in the camp with a lot of people who will defend Palmer last season. I think he finished the season playing pretty well. The injuries on the offensive line position really hindered them. We know he's not a mobile guy. Bruce Arians' offense likes to protect the pocket so that it's got opportunities to go deep and throw a lot of intermediate routes. That wasn't necessarily feasible at times last year, particularly early in the year. He can still play. It's just a question of how much pressure he's going to be under. I don't think he's a top 10 quarterback at this point, but it's certainly serviceable enough. The running back position, number one, is obviously going to be David Johnson. He was absolutely phenomenal last year. You could make a legitimate argument he was the best running back in the league. I dread to think what this team would have looked like without him. He really was absolutely spectacular. Can do it all. As good a receiver at the running back position as you've got in the league. He can run with power. He can run outside. He's elusive. Just can do everything. It's hard to come up with a real hole in his game at this point. I think Andre Ellington will be the number two. Wouldn't be surprised if it's necessarily Chris Johnson, the rookie whose name I forget. He's out for 12 weeks, so it's going to be tough for him to see the field. I do think they need to tone down the amount of carries that Johnson gets. Hopefully the passing game and some of these other runners will be able to spell him a bit, because I'm not sure you want to wear a guy out the amount of touches that he had last season. The wide receiver group, which a couple of years ago I would have argued was one of the best receiver corps in the league, it really looks like it's probably close to the opposite end at this point. Larry Fitzgerald is still a very solid possession receiver. They use him in the slot a lot these days. It's not quite got the speed that you want for a guy on the outside. Does struggle to separate a little these days. Still got the best hands in the business. Still a very savvy player. Decent after the catch. He's just not what he once was, but he's still this team's most viable receiving weapon and still a very high quality player. John Brown has had his injury struggles last year. The talent's clearly there. He's got a lot of speed. He's an explosive player. His quickness allows him to be a very dangerous player, but he has had struggles, drops a few too many, isn't the cleanest route runner at this point, but really everything's there for him to be successful. He just needs to stay healthy and work on some of the finer points of his game. And JJ Nelson, who is just a speedster, kind of a Ted Ginn type scenario like yesterday. He can run deep routes. I really hope for this team they can get someone else contributing, because I don't think this group's got a great balance to it at this point in time. Maybe need a guy on the outside who can give him a little bit of reliability. But the Michael Floyd situation has really hit this team pretty hard in my opinion. Tight end Jermaine Gresham. Anyone who was watching the show back around free agency knows how little I think of this. Like he's okay, but the contract was ridiculous. He's a mediocre tight end. He can block a little. He'll make some catches, but I feel like, especially in today's game where the tight end is potentially such a dangerous weapon, you should be looking to do better. The offensive line group. This is a big question mark. Jared Valdir is a very good player when healthy, but he missed a lot of last season. How he comes back is going to be huge. DJ Humphries has struggled early on in his career. I feel I have to play Valdir on the left-hand side. I don't think you can trust Humphries to do it, in spite of the fact I'm pretty sure with Humphries' age and draft pedigree, that's what they'd prefer. It's hard to see it. Based on what we've seen from him on film, he's a bit heavy-footed for me. Seems like a career right tackle. Valdir definitely the superior pass protector. The guard position, you've got Mike Upati. He'll be back. He's a decent. Well, he's a great run blocker, solid in pass protection. He's an above-average guard. The other guard spot, I think, wide open. I've got Evan Boehm currently as the second guard. We'll see what happens there. And at centre, AQ Shipley, still one of the strangest names in a league full of them. They'll need to get some production from him. I've said this many a time in this show, and I'm going to stand by it. Centre is the second most important part of the line. I can't see him changing it at this point. He is listed on the depth chart as the one, or at least he was the last time I looked. And at kicker, Phil Dawson. Catanzaro was a disaster last year. Dawson's a reliable veteran player. I'm sure he'll be an improvement. So this offence as a whole, it's a lot of question marks for me. I'm not a big fan of the weapons beyond David Johnson and Larry Fitzgerald, as a lot of players who've been banged up over the last couple of seasons. The pass protection has to be good. If it is, we saw what Johnson can do. He doesn't need a whole lot of help. He just needs somebody to take some pressure off him. As I say, I don't think Fitzgerald's that guy at this point in his career. If John Brown can really step up and become a viable number one or high-end number two type receiver, then I think this group's got a lot of potential. But the offensive line is, for me, where it's going to begin and end. And, of course, David Johnson is going to have to stay healthy and replicate what he did last year. In order for this team to have success, I just don't think the personnel are currently there for Arians to run this attack in the way that he would like. But we'll see how things come together. I look at this group and I just think it's going to be a fairly middling group at this point in time. Moving on to the defensive starters. This is a real hodgepodge of experience and new players. The defensive ends, I've got Robert Nkemdiche and Frosty Rucker down at the minute. Rucker, I just think he'll get the nod because this is a defence, particularly on the line, that I think needs to have some experience. Calais Campbell was such a huge loss, so I think he gets the nod. And Nkemdiche, of course, the first round pick last year, basically was a wash of a player in his rookie season. All the physical talent, just whether he can get it. His big shoes to fill in Calais Campbell, one of the best players at the position in the league. It's going to be a tough ask to replace him in the long run. If they can just get some productivity out of him this year, that would be great for them. And at nose tackle, Corey Peters, much like with Frosty Rucker, it is plausible seeing someone else lining up there. I just think, again, you want to have some experienced players, particularly when you look at the variety of youngsters this team's going to be fielding. The outside backer spot, this was really the strength of this team last year, having been a weakness for so long. Odd how things can change so quickly. Chandler Jones has got a monster deal to go along with what was a great season, his best as a pro last year. He really did play exceptionally in both the run and the pass game, was one of the most disruptive edge rushers in the league. Marcus Golden was also very effective as his running mate. This was one of the best tandems of pass rushers in the league last year. I'd like to see him play a little bit better against the run, because if he can, then this team's going to be very difficult to get the edge on. But this is a good pairing, and if someone can step up as a rotational guy, that would be great for this team. But these two, if they can stay healthy, I'm pretty sure they're going to have another very good season. The inside linebacker spot, this is an interesting one. Dion Buchanan, if he's healthy, he's been pretty good. As interesting conversion that they've attempted with him, but it is worked out so far. It fits. I can't see too many teams doing it, but this scheme, it works. And I just think Hassan Reddick fits this team to a T. Again, if you watched any of my draft stuff before that happened, Reddick was someone I linked with the Cardinals because I just thought it's tough to find a backer with the potential versatility this guy's got. Of course, he was an edge rusher in college. This team blitzes as much as anyone. I think he's got the versatility and the athletic skill set to do all the things they ask. Might not start early. I think it's going to be a difficult transition for him, especially the experience he had in college, playing so many different positions as a walk-on. We could easily see the veteran Carlos Dansby early on in the season, but I think eventually he's going to be just too difficult to keep off the field. He's such an explosive player. The corner group, well, you've got Patrick Peterson as the one, arguably the best corner in the league, certainly the most physically talented. And then beyond him, it's difficult. There's so many injuries at this position at the moment in camp. It's very difficult to predict how it's going to look. I think you can't play Brandon Williams as the 2 after what we saw last year. And, it's difficult to read into the Hall of Fame game of all things. But he was getting beaten in that. So that's a concerning thing for me. So I think Bethel, just again, they need somebody with some experience there. It's a tough job lining up opposite Peterson, especially with how much man you have to play in this scheme. I don't think he's wonderfully suited to that role. I'd rather see him in the slot, but I really think they've got no one else. I think Williams will start in the slot. They want this guy to develop. They're going to give him chances, and you never know, maybe he'll step up and take that 2 spot, putting Bethel in the slot where I think he can be very effective. But I do worry, beyond Patrick Peterson, these other guys are going to be targeted, and I'm not sure the talent's there for it to not be a valid strategy. And the safety position, Tony Jefferson, a big loss, but they did replace him with one of my favourite players in the draft, Buda Baker, who could certainly see some snaps at the corner position. He's got a lot of versatility. You can certainly see him playing in the nickel. They've been using him that way in training camp. Definitely won't be a shock to see that. As I say, this defence is as multiple as it gets. Tyrann Mathieu, if he's back, then that's huge for this team. He was so dynamic a couple of seasons ago before the injury and was a legitimate defensive MVP candidate. The anticipation and effort that he plays with really separates him. He's, for a guy that small, great tackler and a great story. So hopefully he's fully back. It will be huge for these guys if he is. If Baker, ends up settling into a nickel role, which I don't think is implausible considering the issues they've got at that spot, we might see DJ Swearinger, who's just a thumper, possibly even move Dion Buchanan back there. Who knows? Go back to his old position. There's a lot of ifs there. As I say, I feel beyond Matthew and Peterson, I think all of these spots are certainly open. Could end up looking pretty different in week 1. And the punter, Matt Weil. Defensively, I'm very concerned for this team. I worry about how effective they're going to be against the run. Reddick and Buchanan are pretty lightweight, and that line doesn't look great. I think the pass rush will be fine. This team will blitz a lot. They've got the edge rushers there, but for me, the big question will be how well they can hold up against the run, and I'm a little bit dubious. Similar, the secondary, you've got 2 of the better players in the league. Then beyond that, a lot of question marks. This defence really could be hit or miss this year. I think they're going to struggle, particularly in the early season. And we'll see. They're going to have to handle the run better than I'm expecting. Otherwise, they're going to give up a lot of points, I think. It's going to be interesting to see for sure. So, next year, last year, 7-8-1, a very disappointing season. I had this team making a deep playoff run in my mind. And this year, I think 8-8 seems about fair. I think Bruce Arians is a fantastic coach, and I'm pretty much putting my faith in him to get this team to 8-8. I'm not sure they're there when I look at them at this point. I think there's a lot of holes still on this roster. I think the early part of the season, particularly defensively, is going to be a big transition. Those early games are essential. There are some winnable games in there, so I don't think it's inconceivable they get off to a hot start and manage to battle their way into the playoffs, because the Lions is a winnable game. The Colts certainly is. When they play the Cowboys, they always play the Cowboys tough, and still don't know what to make of the Cowboys defensively. and then they've got the Niners, which is as winnable as an NFL game can get these days. So they could get off to a hot start. The issue they're going to have is right at the end of the season, if it does come down to, those final few games needing to get 1 or 2 wins, it might be tough because you've got the Seahawks in the final week, the Giants the week before that, the Redskins, who can certainly put up some points, and the Titans. So, on to the 3 key areas for the 2017 Cardinals. If this team is going to make a run at the playoffs, these areas, most of which I've hinted at, are going to have to come together for this team. We'll start first with the defensive line. They've got to minimise the loss of Calais Campbell. You're not going to replace him, particularly over the course of just one off season. Nkemdiche probably doesn't ever end up being that guy, but expect him to be that guy this year. Incredibly unlikely. The other guys are going to have to step up. As I've said, I'm very concerned about this line's ability to stop the run, particularly with the linebackers behind them. The outside guys, they're going to do a good job, I'm convinced, but the rest of it does concern me. Campbell just did so much for this team. He offered pass rush. He was absolutely stout against the run. It's going to be tough to replace. The secondary is also going to have to do its job. There's a lot of question marks there. Teams are just going to avoid Peterson if the other corners cannot play better than they did last year. So that will negate Peterson somewhat. Tyrann Mathieu has to be back to the form we saw a couple of years ago. The other safety spot, we'll have to see what comes out of that. Buda Baker, I think he's going to have to make an impression, whether it's at nickelback or corner. There's a lot of questions here, especially considering how difficult it is to play in this secondary. There's a lot of man, there's a lot of blitzing. It's not going to be easy. And the wide receiver group, beyond Larry Fitzgerald, these guys have been pretty disappointing. They were very disappointing last year. John Brown needs to take that next step that many people expect he's capable of. They need to find someone else that can contribute. As I say, JJ Nelson, he is what he is. Somebody's going to get. There's going to be opportunities there. That includes the tight end spot. I don't think overthrowing Jermaine Gresham should be an enormously tall order for a player. There's going to need to be more weapons and a bit more reliability for Palmer. He can't just keep throwing it to Fitz and David Johnson. Johnson just can't be expected to do what he did last year again and get that many touches. So there you have it. That's your 2017 Arizona Cardinals. I'm not particularly high on this bunch, especially as, considering how they burned me last year. Just so many areas that concern me. I can't get behind him, and I think Arians is a fantastic coach. There's a lot of players I like, but I just feel there's a lot of work to be done with this roster. It's certainly going to be fun to watch them. I do enjoy watching this team play, particularly with that crazy defence. But let me know, what do you guys think? Are there any Cardinals players you're particularly interested in seeing over the course of pre-season or in camp? Anyone I've not mentioned that I should be keeping my eye on? Let me know, whether it's the comment section below, the Cover Zero Facebook page. Find me on Twitter at Simon Conboy. Always happy to talk football. If you've enjoyed this episode, check out some more of them. Covered almost every team in the league at this point. So it's been a lot of fun. There's plenty of other stuff, as I hinted at, draft coverage, free agency, the whole off season has been covered. So check some of that out. And if you can like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon for the channel. It'll all be greatly appreciated. I really am grateful for those of you that do check the show out and enjoy it. And thank you so much once again for watching. It's been a pleasure as always. Have a great evening and go Bucks.